Thank you so much for joining us for today's SC workshop. We have a really knowledgeable and engaging speaker, Natalie Kahn, who is our fabulous library here at the Leeward Library. And we'll just have her get started talking about AI. So I'm going to yield the floor to Natalie Kahn.
Mahalo, Tasha, and thank you folks very much for joining me on a Friday at noon. Who knows what all the wonderful things you could be doing, but you're deciding to geek out with us, and I really appreciate you coming and spending some time to talk about it. It is a discussion, and I really just want us to think a lot today about ChatGPT. So this presentation is geared for students, and I've been talking a lot with teachers and hearing some of their concerns, their worries, some of their experiences around using ChatGPT or some of the reservations around not using it. And so I just wanted to start this conversation and have students really understanding or having a better understanding about what ChatGPT is, different ways you can use it, of course, but also to kind of thinking about some of the limitations, because I think just having a better sort of foundational understanding of not only what it is, what it can do, but what it cannot do is going to make you definitely a more ethical, better user of this tool. So I have slides to kind of keep me on track today. And so I'm going to pull those up now. Feel free throughout this presentation to drop some questions in the chat. I have some friends who are helping me out today, and they're going to help me with some of these questions. But yeah, just again, thank you so much for attending, and I hope to answer a lot of questions, and probably you're going to leave with even more new exciting questions. But to kick this off, I'd like to introduce myself if we don't know each other. My name is Natalie, and I'm one of the librarians at Leeward Community College Library. When I was in community college, I didn't know what librarians did. I was just very afraid of them. But our job is to connect students and staff, faculty, community patrons with information. And certainly that's to help you in your courses, but it's also to help you in life. I think that this is a tool that students will use to, complete coursework, but I think this could also be a really great tool that you're using as professionals in your own personal life, writing personal emails, who knows, maybe holiday cards. So again, it's just something that I wanted to chat with you folks about, and just know that you can contact me anytime, not just in this 60 minutes. If you come up with questions later or you're using this tool and run into some issues, please feel free to drop into the library. You can email, call, chat, make an appointment, or just email me directly at nwahl@hawaii.edu. And I'll drop that at the end of the prez as well. Okay, so here's what we're going to go over today. I am going to go over a very brief ChatGPT overview. None of us are going to leave being experts. But again, I think having a better idea of what it is really like my sneaky goal for this entire next hour is like, I want everyone in this room to have a better idea about what ChatGPT is and isn't. We're going to talk about some uses for ChatGPT that would be appropriate for college or university research. I'm going to give you some ideas about things you might want to avoid. I'm also going to have some help from my friends from a beloved university you may be familiar with. It's called TikTok University. I'm going to show you a demonstration for a way that I think would be great for starting off your research. And we'll talk a bit about citing ChatGPT and other large language models. And then I'll leave you with some resources, because what kind of librarian would I be if I wasn't going to leave you with just like a list of information, resources, and links for you folks to use well beyond the next 60 minutes. So let's jump in. Okay, huge disclaimer. Everything I say means nothing if your teacher is not on board. So always, always, always check with your kumu. You need to ask them, can I use this tool for this particular assignment? And it's sometimes not that easy. It's not always a yes, no question. How can I use this? So some examples is maybe you can start out your research, or you can start out some ideas for an assignment, an essay, a speech. You can outline things. Maybe you can use this tool for some revision, some editing, and that's up to your teacher. And I think the most important thing to take away from this next hour is that I think transparency is the best thing you can do to avoid any sort of ethical issues, anything around plagiarism, for instance, is just to communicate that very clearly with your teachers when and how you're using ChatGPT to help you with your research and your writing. Okay, so If you are wanting a little bit more of an interactive fun time, you can join me at slido.com. You can do this, scan this QR code on your phone, or if I'm really blessed, I have 3 screens in front of me right now, humble brag. And you can put in the code 1193-900. And I have just a few prompts throughout to make sure that none of you fall asleep. Just kidding, that's not why. It's so that we're all engaged and we're all participating. We're all important. Okay, so should I leave that up there a little bit longer? Can somebody give me an emoji? Like, just throw up any emoji. I'll take an alien, a thumbs up. You can use these old-fashioned emojis that are attached to your hands if you are following me. And you're, okay, thank you, Holly J. Okay. So slido.com, 1193-900. Awesome, you folks are great. Okay, ChatGPT overview. I love an emoji. It's my generation. What is this thing and what is the big deal? Okay, so here we go. You were enrolled, it's TikTok University, and this fancy man from Harvard is going to tell us what it is. Thank goodness.
You worry about ChatGPT, but I'm sorry, I can't hear the audio.
I tested it and everything. Okay, well, it is caption. So this lovely fellow, and I almost busted out my Halloween gray wig so that I would look a little bit more scholarly when I was telling you all about ChatGPT. But it's pretty much, he's saying that we should be concerned, but we shouldn't be afraid. It's this large language model tool. Don't you worry, I'm going to explain it in the next slide. Useless.
You worry about ChatGPT.
Okay, so I'm going to go back a couple clicks. So what is AI? Artificial intelligence refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to think and learn like humans, but we're not exactly there yet. So an LLM is another thing you're going to hear a lot. AI, LLM, chat bots, you're going to hear all this stuff. There's a glossary at the end, I promise. So an LLM is a type of AI that's trained on vast amounts of text data to generate human-like language. So it's like a language tool. And so ChatGPT, which we're going to be talking about today, is a specific LLM. There are many different floating out there right now. It's developed by OpenAI. It's free, but there is a paid version, and it's trained to generate natural language text. It can be used for a variety of tasks, such as text completion, translation, and conversation generation. So this is really important to know because I think a lot of times we are treating ChatGPT almost like you're doing a Google search. We're treating it like a search engine. Or maybe if you're conducting research, you're treating it like a database, like a container of articles and websites and information. And it's none of those things. It's just a language tool. So what's the big deal? Why are we all here today? So some of the concerns have to do with misinformation, the spread of false, biased, misleading, or otherwise crappy information. There are concerns about the economy, the impact it would have on the job market, for instance. You know, I've heard it often in my profession as a librarian. People say, oh, well, there's Google. We don't need librarians anymore. But I think there is a real threat with this, advancements in artificial intelligence, that it's going to replace some of our human workforce. And then there's lots of ethical concerns. I mean, it's taking all this information, we're feeding into it, and it's pumping it out. It doesn't give credit. It's really a lot of dubious, scary, hallucinated, interesting information out there. So those are some of the concerns. But now I'm sure a lot of you want to know, well, what are some of the amazing opportunities, possibilities? This bugga is free for now. There's also, like I said, a newer, more advanced paid version. And I think that's going to be open to the public beginning of next year. So just a few months from now. It's really powerful as a tool and it's quickly evolving. And there is this hope that it's going to advance research because it's taking all this information that we're feeding into it. It can bring things together. And yeah, so there's a lot of possibilities for it. And I know that our students are excited about using it. All tools should help us make our lives a bit easier. And I think there's a lot of possibility around that here. Okay, so if you went to slido.com and typed in 1193-900, I see that all of you have already started putting in some interesting things. How do you feel about using ChatGPT for college or university research? And I'm seeing a lot of you are feeling nervous. Some are excited. Some have exploding brains. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it. I think I relate. I feel nervous and excited about it too. I'm excited about things being a little bit easier. I'm excited about a new interesting tool, but I am nervous about things related to like misinformation and plagiarism. Mixed. Help. Okay, hopefully we're here to help. So let's move on. So let's talk about some tips and ideas for actually using this very powerful new shiny toy. So I have this idea. So for the rest of this presentation, I want us to pretend that we're going to start research on an English 100 paper. So obviously there's really limitless ideas for how you could use ChatGPT, but to kind of rein it in because it is so enormous, I want to think of us as like, we're English 100 students, we're starting out our research. And so I want you to think of ChatGPT as your English teacher, okay? So what are the kinds of questions you would ask a person? And so specifically, what are questions you would ask Dr. Meredith Lee or Jen Wharton or any of your English teachers? What are some questions you would ask them? So I would feel comfortable asking my English teacher, what is a cool topic that I can write this English 100 argumentative paper about? Right? Like that's an appropriate question. Sometimes teachers will even supply you with some ideas, right, for research, some different topics or areas of research. You can maybe take it a step further and say, okay, that's a cool topic. What are sort of the big issues? What's the pro con? What are 3 things I should know about this? I think that's an appropriate thing because again, you're thinking about a conversation with a human, a really smart human, a human that's grading your paper, but it's a person. So these are ethically, reasonably awesome questions to ask your teacher. So can you think of anything else? I mean, feel free to drop it in the chat. I'm going to think also too about requests you wouldn't ask your teacher. What are things you wouldn't ask Dr. Lee? You wouldn't say, hey teacher, can you give me 4 to 6 peer-reviewed sources, give them to me in MLA format, annotate them. Your teacher would be like, are you bananas? I'm not going to do your work for you. That's on you. You got to go talk to a librarian or go to Primo Search and find these articles. They wouldn't just do your work for you, right? So that's something you shouldn't ask ChatGPT to do. You wouldn't ask your teacher to write your paper for you. And so you shouldn't ask ChatGPT of that. So again, I think some of these things maybe sound obvious, but again, if you're concerned with some of the ethical issues around using ChatGPT, what's plagiarism, what percentage of the work needs to be mine, I think that it's a really good sort of starting point. Would I ask my teacher to do this? So it's like, would I ask my teacher for a great book on this topic? Sure. Would I ask them to write all of my sources down in MLA format? Absolutely not. So it's a good place to start when you're thinking about how to use ChatGPT for an assignment like an English 100 paper. Okay, now, so I mentioned thinking of it like a teacher, and so we're going to think like that for the rest of this presentation. But I also wanted to throw out there that you can think of this as a conversation tool, right? It's a language tool. So you can consider talking to ChatGPT and letting ChatGPT know, talk to me like you're my mentor, like a tutor. You're my coach, you're my teammate, you're my peer. Please, you're my peer in English 100. Can you revise this paragraph for me? You can say, you can do a simulation. You can say you're a tool, pump out these 3 things. So there are a lot of different roles that you can assign to ChatGPT. But again, I think focusing on sort of the ethical issues that we're concerned with in college and university research, I want you to think of it as the teacher for the assignment you're researching or working on. Okay, so how do you talk to ChatGPT? And I'm so mad because I have a really good TikTok that I'm like, I can't figure out my audio settings live and direct. I'm too nervous for that. Okay, so talk to ChatGPT like it's a person. And when I say that, I don't just mean natural language. I'm saying expect, just like when you're speaking with a person in real life, expect that there's going to be some misinterpretation, miscommunication. You may need to explain yourself a little bit more fully. You may need to adjust your prompt in order to get a different type of response. Consider the length. You can ask a super long question. You can give examples. You can have them tell them how long of a tell ChatGPT how long and what style. So you can say, give me a bullet list of keywords I can use to do research for this topic, that kind of thing. I'm skipping ahead a little bit, I think. Now your prompts really matter. If you just ask ChatGPT, for instance, can you write me an introductory paragraph for my English 100 paper? You're going to get a crappy paragraph back. But you can actually say what your topic is, what your area of interest is, what are 3 most burning important things that I should consider. You can say what tone to write it in. You can be really specific. And so the quality and detail that you put in the prompt will directly affect the quality of the response that ChatGPT provides. So take some time with your prompt. Consider this as language, and like you were talking to a person, may need some adjustments, revisions, clarifications. So I also just wanted to throw this out here because we're doing a lot of our work and research here in Hawaii. It's a language tool. If you are taking any language class, including Olelo Hawaii, just know that ChatGPT is fed with a lot of text, and that includes languages other than English. And so I just asked ChatGPT if it speaks Olelo Hawaii, and it responded that it sure does. Okay, here's a TikTok I can't show you. I'm so sad. But this is some 4 tips from this user, and I have links to all of these fabulous TikToks, which you can watch later. And if you're like me, you definitely spend all of your time on TikTok doing hardcore research. And so this will just fit into your normal TikTok scrolling routine, I'm sure. But so this user was saying that a few tips for getting back great results is asking ChatGPT to assume a certain role, defining the goals, saying, I'm going to make, an English 100 paper, or I'm writing a Christmas card or something like that. Have restrictions and then tweak your results. So it's some really great advice for not just taking the first thing that ChatGPT spits out and really getting a great response. Oh, and it's going to play now. Next. Okay. So, again, you can re-ask questions for different answers. You can regenerate answers. You can try a more or less scholarly tone. You can ask it to rephrase. You can ask for more details for longer or shorter responses. You can ask follow-up questions like, oh, well, if you're saying that, what does that implies this? And it can give you some more information. You can ask it to support claims. You can ask it for actual links to information, but just know that you have to test the links because oftentimes they'll take you nowhere, or they're kind of rusty, dusty, or maybe not the most authoritative or reliable sources. Double check any claims made by ChatGPT. Students probably want me to give them some kind of shortcut, but I would want you to do that for all of your research. So certainly we know that ChatGPT can hallucinate answers. It's not always totally correct. It's a language tool. It's not a search engine or a database. So we already know. But the fact is, a good researcher will look at any information, whether it's from an edited book, a peer-reviewed journal article, an interview with an expert in the field, and you should always think critically about it and check your sources. Verify that information is accurate in another place. Compare it to other information on the same topic. So you want to double check your claims anywhere and everywhere. You want to look for source citations and so on, but especially so in ChatGPT, because again, it's a language model. It's not a database. It's not a search engine. Oh, and I just wanted to underline, especially if you're getting data or statistics, and that's so easy to verify. A quick Google search will often validate or let you know it's not worth using. Okay, so can you think of a few more tips? I'm sure that many of you have already played around with ChatGPT or another large language model. Is there any tip that you can think of to get really quality information back in a ChatGPT response? So some of the tips, like the TikTok that I wasn't able to show, he was saying, like assigning ChatGPT a role, indicating what kind of response you want, whether it's a paragraph or a bulleted list or something like that. No tips? That's okay. We'll move. Oh, good verbs like summarize and categorize. That's fabulous. Yeah. Then you're not just stuck with like a block of text, right? So it's more manageable. So it's probably condensed. Add in a few visual games. I'm sure our visual learners in the house are like, yeah, definitely. Ooh, specifics. That's absolutely. I think that's something where many of us, because we're so used to using Google as a tool when we're conducting any type of research, whether it's just personal research or scholarly research, that we're just used to being really brief and to the point. But here's a place where actually the more specific prompts will result in more specific responses, which is what you want. Awesome, folks. Thank you. Okay, So I was going to actually open this up. I'm going to stop my full screen. I just pulled up. So I'm going to show you kind of the sneak preview. So I was playing around with ChatGPT just last week, preparing for this presentation. And I thought, if I'm writing an English 100 argumentative paper and I'm writing it here at Leeward Community College, what are some things that I think, again, would be reasonable, as long as I was being open and clear with my instructor about how I was using this tool? What are the types of things I would ask? So I'm just going to go over to OpenAI, to chat.openai.com, and here's the actual transcript. And it's cool because unless you want to delete it, which you can do, it will remember your conversation, so you can refer back to them, which is really, really great. We're going to talk about citing it toward the end of this presentation. So I asked ChatGPT, what's an interesting topic to write about? And I was specific, not just like generally. I said, this is an English 100 class at LCC in Pearl City, Hawaii. I'm letting ChatGPT know what class, where I'm at, what level. And they said, oh, okay, well, here's some ideas: diversity in Hawaii, impact of tourism, environmental conservation, things that are really geographically specific, which I think is a great thing to write about, because it's like so much more interesting to do research about things that we're expert about, in our own backyard. One that stuck out to me as someone who studied a bit of Olelo Hawaii is Hawaiian language revitalization. That one really jumped off to me. I liked all of these suggestions though. So I thought, again, here's an example of a really good use of ChatGPT. It's like talking to your English teacher or talking to a super smart friend. What are some cool topics, that I can write about for this kind of class here in Hawaii? And I thought it did a pretty good job, honestly. Well, then I followed up. Well, what are some ways to revitalize Hawaiian language? And then it listed some great ways, right? And so here's a list that it gave me: immersion schools, classes, online resources, workshops, and more. So it gives me 15 examples. What are the best reasons? Because again, if I'm writing an argumentative paper, right? What are the best reasons to revitalize Hawaiian language? Cultural preservation, cultural identity and pride, environmental and ecological knowledge. I'm sorry, but these are things that I just wouldn't have thought of off the top of my head. And maybe you haven't come into the library and sat with a librarian yet. Just like ChatGPT, we're a tool that you folks can use. You can come in and ask us these kinds of questions. What's a great research topic? What are some, things that I can research within this topic? What are like 3 arguments for revitalizing language, and so on? So this isn't your only tool for that. I want to encourage you to come into the library or make an appointment with me or call or email. But this is one, I think, totally appropriate thing you can ask a tool like ChatGPT or a librarian. So moving on, this is another great one. What are keywords I can use to research Hawaiian language revitalization? I want to stop again and just talk about what is and what ChatGPT isn't. So it's a language tool. So it would be a horrible place to go and say, can you give me 3 articles about Hawaiian revitalization? Which maybe I should have tried to show you a crappy example. It would give me things that are like maybe not relevant, maybe out of date. And so it's like, if you want the most up-to-date resources, you really should be doing great Google searches and coming into the library and connecting with some of our collections, both online and in print. But something, again, that I think I'm going to go back to my slide, ChatGPT would be great at is coming up with keywords. Sometimes that's the hardest part when you're conducting research, is kind of unlocking these amazing books, ebooks, scholarly articles, videos. We have so much information in the library and in the library databases, but it can be really, really hard to find. And so I love this. It brought me back this amazing list of terms I could use, because if I just researched Hawaiian language revitalization, those are strong search terms that will bring me back books and ebooks, book chapters, videos, articles. It's a great start. But then there's lots of other things too, like, oh, maybe I want to know more about those immersion schools. Maybe I want to know about, like, there's this, I wouldn't have known about this Council of Hawaiian Language. So it's giving you different key terms that you can search that will bring you back information that will help you with this specific assignment. So I think that that's something I really want you folks to practice using if you're going to be using this tool, asking ChatGPT for important keywords for researching your topic. And then I wanted to actually, if I can bounce around a little bit, just to show you, I went to the library's One Search tool, Primo, which I have links to this in my slides, which I'm so happy to share at the end. And so I just put in Hawaiian language revitalization. It was the first suggestion of keywords. And I was able to come up with, I see articles, books, book chapters, and videos in the library that I know these would be reputable resources on this topic. So I'm not asking ChatGPT to provide me the information that you can only find in books, ebooks, articles, videos. ChatGPT is just like talking to a person. It's not a library. It's not a database, right? And so it's just going to give you the ideas that make research a lot easier and a lot better, I think. So here are some of the keywords. And then I have just a couple other things that I prompted to get me started in my research and my writing. So this one is probably a little bit controversial. This one you definitely have to run by your teacher. But let's say you use your keywords, you found some great resources having to do with the history of Hawaiian language bands, some of the revitalization. You have lots of good information and you're getting started. Something ChatGPT can help you with is outlining. But again, if your instructor really wants you to sharpen that skill using the computer between your ears, that's something you should be doing. But if it is appropriate for an assignment to get some help with outlining, maybe you take your own outline, plug it into ChatGPT, and ask it to adjust it for clarity or for impact or that kind of thing. Outlining is another thing that ChatGPT can help you with. So here's the example here. It even gave me a title for my paper. There's an intro, background, and then there's paragraphs for each of the 3 main arguments. There's some challenges, some laws, counter arguments, conclusion, and references. And I like this as list all your references, but thankfully in this case, it didn't, hallucinate or imagine any bizarre mishmash made up references. So that's for you to do in the database with the librarian or online on your own. So then here's where I said, write a paragraph. This is something that I do not think would be appropriate, but I basically wanted to see how crappy or not it was. And then again, I thought something that you can do is if it were your own paragraph, you could say, can you make it like angry but professional in tone? So maybe you can work on some of your editing here, right? And that's all I have for my demonstration for how you can kind of start off with some of your research. Does anyone have any questions at this point? I know I've been doing a lot of talking and I just had us do a few little Slidos. Okay, so we did that. Oh, here are some things to avoid and like things that you might get a better result if you do instead. Oh my gosh, it's my final TikTok, I promise. But don't worry, you're not missing a lot. I have links to the TikToks at the end. Here's what to avoid for college research. Asking ChatGPT to write your paper. So instead, ChatGPT is a great tool for you to explore different topics, develop searchable key terms, and get feedback for your own writing. Don't just take the first thing ChatGPT says. Don't take it at its word. You start with ChatGPT, sure, but then you can search more reputable sites and sources, like going online and looking at some great .edus, .govs, .orgs, coming into the library, using our research databases, using our books and ebooks that you find through the catalog to evaluate information. Yeah, does someone have a question?
I just wanted to let you know there's a question in the chat, I think.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, so Kelly, what's up, Kelly? How would you actually plug your own work? You would literally, yeah, you're right. You would literally copy and paste your outline. And that's the thing too. I said it at the top. I'm not sure if you were here yet, but your prompt can be super long. You could literally put your entire paper and ask for revisions. And I think that's another thing too that's really good to know. Just like it's a language tool, it'll be better at giving you revisions than it would be at writing your paper for you. But that's another thing. You don't have to take every revision it gets. Like, I'm sure a lot of us have had the experience where we're working in Word or Google Docs and there's some spell check for something, but it's not a misspelled word. It's just a word that's not in the dictionary, right, of Google Docs. And so you shouldn't, as I was just mentioning, take it right at its word. And so, oh, well, ChatGPT thinks that, this sentence sounds better here. But you are a human, you know your teacher. ChatGPT is not a human, does not know your teacher. And so you don't have to take all of its advice, but you can literally copy and paste a paragraph, an outline, a paper. You could put in your works cited page, for instance, and ask, oh, is there a source that I'm missing? And it might give you an idea, but it won't provide you with the source. And then, yeah, and you can continue, like, it's a conversation, Kelly. So once you plug it in, and you could say, okay, here's my outline, let's say, can you organize my outline for clarity? And then it does, but then maybe it puts the counter argument in a place you don't like. And so you can say, okay, taking the suggestion above, can you place the counter argument after the paragraph on laws and legislation? And then it will provide you with that. So it remembers where you're at and it can keep building. You can just keep the conversation going and going and going. So let me come back in. I don't think no, I'm not sharing. Okay. So then this, I just wanted to show, I think I got through, that was, oh, actually, no, let me just get through the last little. So don't take it at its word. Evaluate claims is where I left off. And then the last thing you should not use ChatGPT for is anything having to do with current up-to-date information. I think the last sort of huge update of info it has was from 2021. So you wouldn't want to ask any information on anything going on in the news right now with like Israel and Palestine, things like that. It's going to be rusty dusty. You can ask for historic kind of things, get conversations started. What are keywords? What are main issues? That's unchanged, but you wouldn't want to ask it for like data, statistics, numbers. For that, we go to newspapers, great websites, research reports and articles, and scholarly peer-reviewed journals and trade journals. So there's great sources for current information. ChatGPT is not one. So find out the history, find up the need to know information here, and then go to your library and online resources for up-to-the-minute information, data, statistics, and so on. So I just put this little screenshot. This is actually more aimed at if I do this type of a workshop for my colleagues, my teaching colleagues. But I just want to say that, like, obviously, I think the main concern that your teachers are going to have is that this is a tool for plagiarism, because you can just say, hey, ChatGPT, write my paper for me. And it will kind of say something like, well, I really can't do that. I'm a language model. I'm not a student. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have resources. But here, this is my best crack. But I just find this funny that this is a student who literally copy and pasted. I mean, I don't know if this is real, but a student that copy and pasted this summary of 12th night, and it says right at the beginning, sorry, I'm a language model. I'm not able to do this assignment, blah, blah, blah. And so teachers know. That's what I'll leave you with. They're spooky like that. Intuition. Okay, but I do want to leave you with good sources, because throughout this whole thing, I'm like, okay, you can chit chat with ChatGPT, you can ask for revisions, you can ask for keywords and topics, you can do all this stuff, but it will not give you information, right? You should not take information that it gives you, because it mumbles things up, it makes things up. So where do you go for information? So if you're a Leeward student, go to Leeward Library. Our website is bursting with articles, like millions of peer-reviewed articles out of fabulous scholarly and academic journals. We have trade journals for any number of careers and professions you can imagine. We have magazines, we have print books, we have something like 500,000 ebooks, not to mention you folks have access to all 10 UH libraries. If you need to borrow a book from any of the institutions, they'll send it here for free. So you have access to tons of good information. So again, this whole presentation is about ways to use ChatGPT that help get you there, but you still have to use reliable, authoritative, accurate, current sources of information to inform all of your research that you do, whether you're writing, for a speech class, a history class, anything writing intensive, and of course your English papers. So I put some links, again, all of this I can share. I do want to talk a little bit about citation, because it's great when you can find information. ChatGPT is kind of interesting. I've actually asked it, like, how do I cite this? And it basically just says like, oh, you could just say this information comes from ChatGPT, which is an open AI tool, blah, 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 really vague, generic stuff. But I'm not super sure if you can get directly back to an exact response. So just, again, I think being transparent and saying that you've used a tool like this and how you used it, where you used it, is your best bet. So there is some guidance. The fabulous librarians at Harper College have a library guide where they're talking about how to cite ChatGPT, but it's much of what I just said, which is like, just say that you're using it, how you're using it, because it's hard to retrace your steps. And then the Purdue OWL Writing Lab, which is kind of my Bible for MLA, Modern Language Association style of formatting, they give some advice. So anytime you paraphrase, quote, or using anything that you find, you have to cite this tool that you're using. There are different tools. We're talking about ChatGPT today. And then you have to acknowledge all functional uses in some kind of a note within your text or somewhere else. Could be a footnote, for instance. Maybe even I'm thinking about, like, you know, if you submitted an assignment in LaLima, maybe just including a message along with it indicating that you used it for brainstorming, for instance. Oh, and again, I know that we've said this 6 times throughout this presentation, but just make sure to verify the secondary sources. Sometimes ChatGPT will provide you with citations or links to information, but like I said, I get about a 50-50 rate of when I go to a link, it even existing. And then once I've gotten to a link, I don't think I've ever even found one that I would deem usable for an English 100 level writing of a level of reading, writing, and research. I just think it's like not very college appropriate, not very scholarly, let's say. It might be, I'm not saying it's incorrect information, but it could be a little bit dated. It could be sort of more for entertainment or just general public. It's not really for scholarly research. And so we can always do better in the library. I'm telling you, 100% of the time, we'll do better than ChatGPT for finding you reasonable, reliable, awesome, accurate sources. Okay, and then I feel like I'm at the end of the line. What's next? Why won't it go? Oh, my final thoughts. Okay, ChatGPT is like your friend. It's not a servant. So you can ask it for some help, but don't tell it to do your bidding. Think of it as a talking thing, not a knowing thing. ChatGPT is a tool. It's not an almighty power. It's not a container of information. It is advancing quickly, but it makes a ton of mistakes. So I think just knowing that, and if you're using it cautiously, you'll have a better result with your prompts and output. And then whenever you're in doubt about whether you can use it or the information you're getting from it, talk to your teachers. Something right now I can tell you is there is no one policy or guidelines for the use of ChatGPT or other LLMs right now throughout the university system. Everyone's kind of figuring it out. And part of that is leaving it up to the faculty to decide what they're comfortable with and what's appropriate. You know, I mentioned it kind of at the top, but I was like, this is a great tool for making outlines. But if your teacher wants you to develop a skill of organizing information before you write about it, that's not going to help you. It's just going to give it to you. And then you don't develop that skill on your own, which is like a tremendous life skill that you need. And so it's not, like I said, a gray or a black-white thing. It's usually gray. It's not always, can I use this? Yes, no. It's often, well, how can I use it? When can I use it? And being very, very clear about that. Every assignment even will be different, right? Like maybe earlier in the semester, you're writing a compare contrast essay in English 100. They say, sure, you can ask for, you know, some brainstorming things, but then when you get to the argumentative essay further in the semester, it might be time for you to use, again, the computer, the biocomputer between your ears. I find this interesting. So kind of thinking ahead right in the future, now that we have tools like this that are developing so quickly, writing and everything, maybe everything won't be from scratch, and the focus will be coming up with original thoughts. And so I really hope that today in this session, you've started thinking about what ChatGPT is, what it isn't, and how you can use it in a way that is just not straight up plagiarism. Oh yeah, so Christy Dasching wrote a very interesting, oh my gosh, Betty, I'm just seeing, Miley said she's received papers with that AI statement. Folks, again, it's like, okay. I could just talk for an hour, I won't, don't worry, about the whole plagiarism and cheating thing. But I'm like, we've had the internet for how long now? You can take a book off the shelf and you can write word for word and steal from a book, right? The opportunity to plagiarize and steal information has always been abundantly available. This is a new tool, but plagiarism is an old game and it's going to be around forever. I just wanted to share today, and I really, really hope that if you're a student and you attended, that you've found a way that you can actually use this tool that's going to make research a lot easier. But I still want you to use the resources, the tools, the skills that you already have innately for finding, evaluating, and using information. It's something that we impose upon you in college. Hey, write this paper, research this speech, but you're going to leave college and you're going to need to buy homes. You're going to have sick relatives and you have to find them the best care, the best course of action. And you do that by having those skills so sharp and not being duped by things that sound too good to be true, right? And so these are important life skills. And so just taking something, copy pasting from ChatGPT, I could do that, you can do that. That takes no skill at all. I think that it takes skill to use tools. And I think the more that you practice using this tool, just like other fabulous tools, like your wonderful, helpful librarians, like your awesome scholarly databases, you're going to get better and better at it. And just copy pasting does not help you, other than maybe it'll help you pass a class if you don't get caught. So it's like, don't chance them. I hope you learned something today that will help you use it in an ethical way. And then what Christy was saying is that she saw in the news that ChatGPT created a fake link to Washington Post article that didn't exist. And I've heard lots of examples like this, because again, imagine even if you were talking to me, I'm a big bad librarian. I deal in information and articles and all that. So I could be talking to you today and I could say, I just read a New York Times article and it was talking about climate change and blah, 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 right? Now, can I make a mistake if I'm just going off the top of my head? Absolutely. Maybe I read it in LA Times, not New York Times, but I had just like, I flipped those or reversed it. So what you would do as a good researcher is after we chatted, you would look up New York Times, climate change, and whatever else, and then you would find it. And then you'd probably go, oh, the article she was talking about is in New York Times. So again, this is a language tool. It's not a research tool like a database where you can go and find an article. And so sometimes when it links you to things, sometimes the link will actually work. But again, the thing that it links you to is not usually good, because it's like talking to a person. So a person has ideas, a person has thoughts, a person can chit chat and bounce things back and forth with you. But a person is not a good container of articles and ebooks and chapters and videos. So for that, you need to use those tools, search engines, databases, librarians, and so on. So yeah, that's one of those pitfalls. Let me see. I think my last slide is just, we have one last slide, I promise. So now that you know a little bit more about what it is, a language model, and it's not a database, it's not a search engine, how do you feel now about using it in college research? And it's totally okay to say, I still feel nervous or feel excited, but I gave you a little emoji because I wanted to see how folks were feeling about it. It's slido.com, 1193. Oh, our one person is feeling pretty good. 4 out of 5 ain't bad, right? It's a B. Oh, we're getting somewhere. Wow, okay. Someone's okay with it. Someone's loving it. Most of us are in between those two. That's kind of how I feel. I feel in between. I feel like I said, I'm excited about using it, even professionally, like it's something where I feel like it can make some of my professional writing a little bit better. Just those getting started stages, some of the revision stages at the end, but I'm not going to go into ChatGPT and ask it for information about my field or trends in my field, data and statistics. There's a lot of things I will not be using it for. So I feel very much the same. And then lastly, I do have some resources. They're kind of geared for teachers, but I think they're super useful. So there's this like mega doc that I always link all my teacher friends to, and it has lots of information. So if you ever actually want to do research about ChatGPT or AI or large language models, it's just a document filled with resources, news, syllabi statements, you name it. The second one is this, I mentioned it earlier, it's a library guide from Harper College that has a lot of information about, different tips and tricks for both teaching and learning with ChatGPT. And then this is sort of brand new. I just ran across this through a different Leeward workshop, but University of Phoenix actually does provide, or they're going to, sort of an article about, they're going to have this philosophy and guidance for using AI. And so a few things I really liked about it, if I can open it up, is that it sort of has these suggestions. If I scroll down, it's bullets, which we love. Oh, wait. Oh, this isn't the one I wanted to link to. I'll probably add a better link. So it was basically saying, there are things that you should use it for. There are things you shouldn't use for, and you should know the difference. And so we can't just sweep it under the rug. It's something that students are going to be using, and we just want to use it correctly in a way that's going to help us with research and help us with writing and not melt our brains. Okay, do you folks have any questions? There's still lots of time, and as promised, I put in my email address. Oh, thanks. I see that our tutor has put in a feedback doc, or if you want to get extra credit for attending today, thank you to our students, especially who came and joined us. But yeah, if you have any questions, you can just chat. Or you can just jump in and I'd be happy to have more of a discussion. I want to know how folks are using it. Any fun or scary stories? Of course, Scott. In fact, I'm just going to share it in the chat now so you folks can have access to the slides. I do wish, though, I'm so bummed. I meant to, the link for the University of Phoenix, it had like some bullet points for some of the suggestions. And so it was things like understanding the limitations and uses of ChatGPT, which I really, really liked that. I'm like, if every student knew that, I'm so less concerned about some of the other issues. And okay, let me copy the link and I'll paste it in the chat. So link to presentation slides. Okay, and make sure, will you click on that and make sure you have access? Should be okay. Everyone should be able to view that. And then you have access to those wonderful TikToks. I learned so much. Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. I learned so much on TikTok. All right, well, I'm going to hang around for a few minutes. So if anyone wants to hang around and just say hi or chit chat, but otherwise, thank you folks so much for attending. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm learning more every day. Again, just don't be a stranger. Come into the library, talk to your teachers, talk to your librarians. We're really, really happy to help guide you through this wonderful, scary, exciting new tool.